To this evening's exciting program, and a special welcome to Lafayette College for those who have come from afar. Tonight's program will consist of a presentation by our distinguished guests, followed by some questions and discussion. My name is John Kincaid. I'm a Minor Professor of Government and Public Service and Director of the Robert B. and Helen S. Minor Center for the Study of State and Local Government here at Lafayette College. I'd like to thank Professor Mark Crane of Policy Studies and Professor Drew Jordanowski of Geology and Environmental Studies and the Mellon Foundation for their support and co-sponsorship of tonight's event. It's a very distinct honor and personal pleasure for me to introduce our distinguished guest, Professor Elinor Ostrom, who is the recipient of the 2009 Nobel Memorial Prize in Economics Sciences. I'm especially delighted because she's a fellow political scientist and a friend of federal democracy. Professor Ostrom was recognized by the Nobel Committee for her analysis of economic governance, especially the commons. Her work has challenged the conventional wisdom that common property is poorly managed and frequently destroyed, a process commonly known as the tragedy of the commons, and that such common resources should be either regulated by central government authorities or by privatized market forces. In her work, based on numerous studies of user-managed fish stocks, pastures, forests, which we'll be talking about tonight, lakes and groundwater basins, which we'll also be talking about, Professor Ostrom concludes that the outcomes are, more often than not, better than predicted by these standard theories. She's found that the users of such common pool resources often develop sophisticated networks and institutions to make decisions, solve problems, and enforce rules for the common good. Importantly, for democratic theory too, her work shows that voluntary associations and self-government can, and often do, work and work well. Professor Ostrom received her PhD in political science from the University of California, Los Angeles in 1965. She's now the Arthur F. Bentley Professor of Political Science at Indiana University Bloomington and Senior Research Director of the Workshop in Political Theory and Policy Analysis, which she co-founded in 1973 with another distinguished political scientist, Vincent Ostrom, her husband. The workshop issues a newsletter called Polycentric Circles, which is available online, so you can look that up very easily and keep track of their work. Among her many awards and honors, she's an elected member of the National Academy of Sciences and of the American Philosophical Society, and an elected fellow of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences and American Association for the Advancement of Science. She also served as the president of the American Political Science Association. Professor Ostrom has produced a truly impressive body of work, including writing or editing about 29 books, if I count it correctly, more than 100 articles and book chapters. If you've not already read her work, you might want to take a look, for example, at her books on governing the commons, the evolution of institutions for collective action, and on understanding institutional diversity. Professor Ostrom is also the first woman to win the Nobel Prize in Economics since it was established in 1969. This award is a wonderful testament to her interdisciplinary work and the reach of that work. Her reputation extends beyond political science, public administration, and economics to include such fields as biology, earth sciences, and environmental sciences. On a personal side, Elinor Ostrom is a delightfully gracious and decent human being who also practices what she preaches. She's often worked collaboratively and cooperatively with other scholars as well as with policymakers, and of course with legions of students over the years who have benefited from her wisdom and her generosity. And I know personally in my work on federalism, I have benefited tremendously from both her work and her personal counsel. So we're really delighted that she is here tonight and that she's brought some harbingers of spring weather with her too. And so, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Elinor Ostrom.
Good evening. What a pleasure to be here. I'm kind of jealous. This is a great place to be. And I have to leave tomorrow morning, so I really do think everything is great here. Let me see if I remember how to work this. Yes. The tragedy of the commons theory that has roots in the work of Garrett Hardin and in game theory in terms of the prisoner's dilemma and some other social dilemmas, presumes that people who use a common resource or are facing a common problem that they can't exclude anybody from benefiting from, they can't overcome what's called social dilemmas, a broader class, in resource use, and they're trapped. And that theory then recommends the imposition of solutions from the outside. So when order is presumed to come from the outside, there is some kind of presumption that all CPRs are similar, so we should be able to come up with optimal solutions, that single policies can be arranged for very large and diverse areas, and that in many instances the theory doesn't totally assist, but we look at how it's been applied, and you're finding aggregate data as a basis for policy in diverse countries around the world, and little knowledge, little weight given to local knowledge. So we've been doing a great deal of research using multiple methods, and the research doesn't support the full set of conclusions from theory. Now, I'm going to briefly talk about the importance of using multiple methods. So, because I'll show you some aspects of that, and we have a book coming out called Working Together that we've struggled with now for some time, trying to show that you need a diversity of methods in what you do. On-the-ground measures give you a way of understanding how variables cluster together and the multiplicity that you find working together or not working together. I'm going to talk with you a little bit about using remotely sensed images, and this gives you a, with satellite going over, they give you a chance to get a much better idea about space. And now that we have ways of putting time periods together, you can look at 3 different time periods and the change over time. So you're getting time and space all in the same image, and you can do a really great analysis. We do a lot of experimental studies at IU, and many of the colleagues here do also. I'm not going to go into experimental today, but I just want to include it as that, and of course, formal models and agent-based models and large and survey, we need it all. Let me give you overall findings from the field, and I'm going to talk mostly about irrigation. I could talk about groundwater or lakes or a variety, but I'm going to focus in on irrigation because we do have a lot of data from the field and very, very important. There are many farmer-managed irrigation systems who manage and develop their own rules. They build the headworks, they build the canals, etc. But some of them don't do good. So this is not a panacea. There are failures, and the important thing is that to recognize there is no institutional arrangement that is 100% successful, or even 95 or 90. I don't know how far down because we don't know the end. But we also have looked at major efforts of national governments with international funding to come in and solve everything because they think the citizens can't do anything. And sometimes those don't work well at all. And privatization has worked. There are some private forests and some private resources of a variety of kind where it works, but not everywhere. So the big finding is that all systems have some successes and some failures, and I'll repeat it again, there are no panaceas. There are no best models that work everywhere.